not least our brilliant speaker this evening, whose brilliant and rather eye-catching blue book, Becoming Bulletproof, Life Lessons from a Secret Service Agent, is of course inspiration for our event. I'm so thrilled to be in conversation with you, Evie, having led the most extraordinary life as a Secret Service agent. She's now on a mission to help us all to benefit from the lessons she's learned along the way about how to cope with stressful situations, the stressful situations that life tends to throw at us, as well as how we can read other people, how we can influence how we are perceived, and generally try and live a more fearless life, or probably, to be more accurate, a life in which we recognize and know how to control our fear. And she really should know. Her work has taken her from interrogation rooms to protecting past presidents of America, including Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and 2 George Bushes. And she now teaches criminology and criminal justice at the City University of New York. But I mustn't speak too much, taking advice from your book. You've tuned in to hear from her, not me, and we'll be chatting for around 40-45 minutes, and then it'll be a chance for questions. It's wonderful to see so many of you joining us, lots of participants. I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, so I'll make sure I try and leave a good amount of room for that at the end. Thank you so much for joining us. And you start your book talking about the rather unimaginable situation you found yourself in 9/11, which led eventually, and you're very humble about this, to you being presented with the United States Secret Service Medal of Valor for your heroism. But can you tell us a little bit about that experience as you describe in the book, and what you learned from it chiefly about resilience and about the human spirit?
Yeah, it was a difficult story to share. I initially didn't want to share it, but I shared it because I wanted to show probably the power of resilience and the power that we have even in the most hopeless of situations. And the point of the story really wasn't about me. It was about finding choices in those moments where we think we have no choices. And I just happened to be there on that day because there was a building called 7 World Trade Center. That building collapsed last, but that was the office that I worked out of. And I happened to be there from the first plane to the collapse of the second tower to, later on that day, and then going to the hospital that night, and then going back to ground zero to help with the cleanup efforts. But what I found is in that situation, I remember, the moment when that first tower fell, and that was really truly the moment, although the whole situation was dangerous, being there from when the planes hit, trying to help people, but then getting caught in the collapse of the tower. I remember that moment where I was like, all right, well, I'm about to die, because I really truly, it was that moment, I was like, this is my time. And I may not have a choice in whether or not I die, but I have a choice in how I handle it. I can be afraid, or I can say, okay, this is what's happening, and make peace with it and accept it and face it. And it was the same thing with the men and women who were also in the towers. And although we don't see it in the media today, they usually don't show those pictures, there were people jumping from the towers. And even those people made a choice, as sad as that choice is. And it's like, okay, it's my end. Do I stay in here, burn, or do I jump? And so for me, it's like, that story is about power. That even when you find yourself in the worst of situations, and although you may not be able to change that specific situation, you have power in how you handle that situation. We're never completely powerless. We become powerless when we think, well, I can't do anything, this is what it is, and it's gonna just completely take me. And so it's really about not surrendering to the chaos and just being able to find a choice. And it was also about humanity, because the book, when I wrote it, it's about protecting yourself, not just physically, but mentally, reading people, influence strategies. And I took all of the things that I learned through training and through experience, and I said, how do I create, or how do I help people become the most bulletproof version of themselves? But there's so many facets to that. There's so many layers that come to being a confident person, a resilient person, a person who faces fear, a person who embraces confrontation. And so I took all those layers, and I put them in that book. And so it's like, here it is, I teach you, here you go. You don't have to go through all the academies I went through. Take what I learned, use it, but then also take what you learned and help other people. Because it's about the humanity.
Yeah. And you know, we will explore this in more detail over the course of our conversation, but by way of introduction, perhaps you could explain what you mean in essence by the bulletproof mindset.
Right, so when the book first was coming out, everybody wanted me to call it fearless. You have to call it fearless. You're a fearless person. People don't want to be afraid. And everybody, the publisher, and I pushed back rather hard. I said, I can't call it that because it's not true. I worked with some of the most bravest human beings. I don't know anybody who wasn't afraid. Anytime we went to do an arrest warrant or execute a search warrant or arrest somebody or you have a gun pointed at you or you're pointing a gun at someone else, at least here in the US, our police are armed, you're afraid of the consequences of what might happen. There is no escaping fear, but there is managing that fear. And fear is good to some degree. Fear right now is what keeps you, when you leave your house, that's why you wear your mask. The fear of catching the virus and fear of giving it to other people. That is healthy fear. And so what I wanted to do is call it becoming bulletproof. One, because we are always becoming something. We are always evolving. You are never done becoming. Strong, resilient, brave. It's an evolution, myself included. I have this saying, the moment you think you know everything is the day you become obsolete. And the other part of it, bulletproof, is on the job I wore a bulletproof vest. A bulletproof vest, the average person may not know this, is made out of fabric. And there's thin layers of fabric, and what they do is they lay the thin layers of fabric, layer upon layer upon layer, and that is what creates this thicker fabric, this molding that molds up to your body that stops the piercing velocity of a bullet or the slash of a knife. And so that is how I saw the book. It's like it's not a gimmick, and I was like, I'm not selling a gimmick, just do these one or two things and you'll be fearless. Because it doesn't exist. It's work. And so I said, these are all the different layers. And I'm going to give you different layers of Kevlar. That's what the fabric is called. There's your different layers of Kevlar. And when you take all these layers and you master chapter after chapter, layer upon layer, when you stack them up, that is what creates your bulletproof vest. That is what makes you the strongest version of you. And at the same time, accepting your vulnerabilities. Because even when I wore my vest, my head was exposed, my legs were exposed, my arms were exposed. So I wasn't unstoppable, but I was harder to stop. So I can't make you unstoppable because it doesn't exist. But I can help make you harder to stop.